Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Andrew Paterson, Michael Remis with you. We've got a busy one today. We got lots of Jets to talk about. Scotty Billeck of the Winnipeg Sun is going to jump on. And, of course, it is the biggest game of the year. Bombers-Lions, Friday night. Ted Wyman's going to jump on as well and talk a little Bombers with us. And then in the second half of the program, we're going to head down to the Twin Cities. And we were originally planning on talking with our pal Jessi Pierce on the Central Division and obviously the team she covers most closely, the Minnesota Wild. But I do have a feeling we'll lean into a little baseball talk, see what the vibe is like around the Twin Cities as Minnesota tries to end their epic postseason losing streak against the Toronto Blue Jays. And I know lots of Winnipeggers and Manitobans made the trip down to the Twin Cities for the game tonight, this afternoon, and tomorrow afternoon, including our pals Ken Weeb and Mike McIntyre of the Winnipeg Free Press. Mike is going to join us on Thursday. And, hopefully we'll be talking about a couple great Blue Jays games that he saw. So we got some baseball, lots of hockey talk, some football, and more. Great to have you all with us here on WST. And hey, everybody, don't forget, thanks again to everyone. We had a nice little bump of subs after yesterday's show. We are now at 9.96, less than 40 to our goal of 10,000 subs on YouTube before next Wednesday's home opener for the Winnipeg Jets. So if you haven't already, slam that subscribe button. And all you WSTers that support us so well, tell a friend if they haven't already and get them on board to be part of the first 10K before puck drop next week. Listen, just before we bring in Reem, let me thank the sponsors that make this show happen each and every day. Of course, our friends at Coolbet Canada, Princess Auto, Consolidated Supply, Boston Pizza, Royal Sports, Little Brown Jug, F Apparel and Nick and Nicky DQ, Wallace & Wallace, Vita Health Fresh Market, Canadian Club, Manitoba Battery, Aquatech, and Modern Man Barber Shop. What's up to everybody in chat? And what's up to Michael Remis? What's up, Remo?
I'm feeling good, yes. We are ready for playoff baseball. Seeing a number of Jays fans in the chat. Saw Adam Lowry rocking a Jays jersey on the Jets social media. I'm feeling good. I'll give my public service announcement, Huss. Go vote today if you are in Manitoba. I know we have a majority of our listeners. I did vote. They asked me if I wanted the sticker after Huss. I was like, I'm good. I don't need a sticker.
You didn't want to be sticker guy in the show today? Hi, everyone.
I'm like, what am I going to do?
First
what
guy
am I going to do
this morning when it opened at 8.
What am I going to do with this sticker, Huss? I don't know. I got nothing to do with it. So I was like, I don't need it. But
did you bring Evan and show him how democracy works?
No, I dropped him off at daycare and went and did it. But I didn't take the sticker. I still have PTSD. Remember at the pierogi eating contest? They gave me a Ukrainian pavilion sticker then, and I forgot to take it off my shirt. And then I washed the shirt with the sticker on, put it in the dryer, and ruined it. So I don't do stickers anymore.
Let's say no to stickers, huh? No, listen, it's good that you did. I mean, we'll do a why not question of the day on the show a little later on. But, of course, the real question of the day is the big election. And, yes, even if it churns your stomach when you look at your options, it's important to vote. So figure it out. Get on down to your polling station today. And, I guess we'll see what happens tonight. Of course, we won't be spending any time talking politics, thank God. But we will be talking a lot of sports on the program. Again, Blue Jays this afternoon. If you're with us live on YouTube, shortly after we finish up the program, first pitch from Kevin Gossman and Lopez for the Twins will get going. I think 3:38, I believe, is the first pitch time. So we got a little matinee baseball, and that'll be the same time tomorrow for the games as well. So we'll be all over that. Just before we get to the Jets from last night, Remo, and everything, how are you feeling about the Jays? I know you were anti-Jays for the last number of weeks as you were the lone Mariners fan pulling for Seattle, but they're done. I know you got a soft spot for Toronto. It's certainly a lot more fun around here when the Jays are doing well in the postseason. What do you think of their chances against the Twinkies?
Yeah, I like. Well, I'll hop on the Jays because everyone I know is into the Jays, and I did rock a Jays jersey at the ALCS in I think 2015 when they in KC. So I'll say that. And look, they're favored. If you want to play a team in the playoffs, play the Twins. They haven't won in 18 games. Haven't won a series in forever. So I think this is a pretty good matchup. They're going to need their bats to actually hit. We know they have solid pitching, but to me it's going to be about the bats. And the Twins are slight favorites, -122. But I think you got to feel good. That's the team you'd want to play. Twins. They're in the worst division, the Central. The Jays don't have a great record against the East, and we saw what happened against the Rangers recently. Although we've seen many times in recent past, whatever your record in the regular season, you can throw that out for the postseason. So I think this is a good matchup for the Jays, and looking forward to seeing some playoff action this afternoon after the show.
Yeah, we'll touch on this late and kind of get into the lines and whatnot over at Coolbet, but we've got the Rangers and Rays are going to be beginning just after 2 p.m. today. Just after 3:30 is Blue Jays Twins. Diamondbacks and Brewers first pitch at 6 o'clock. And then at 7 o'clock, it's the Marlins and Phillies. And the Phillies, the Brewers, and the Rays, all big favorites in their series and, very close. Actually, I think right now, maybe this is just because a lot of Canadian money's coming in, the Blue Jays are actually the favorite in this best of 3 against the Twins, although they opened up as a slight underdog. So we'll touch on that, and we'll head to the Twin Cities with Jessi Pierce a little bit later on today on the program. But let's get to last night. And no, we don't need to talk about Daniel Jones getting killed repeatedly behind an offensive line that cannot block and the Seattle Seahawks running all over the New York Giants. Let's talk about the Winnipeg Jets, who lost to the Calgary Flames after a really impressive first period, which included a goal by Ville Heinola that got a lot of people online all fired up. 2 goals from David Gustafsson, a couple assists on those goals to Parker Ford. But the Calgary Flames really stepping up their game in the second and third periods and coming away with the win. Listen, this game, first of all, wasn't even on television. You had to find it on the Winnipeg Jets website. Not the best way to, break down games, Reem, but there was definitely some good early on. And listen, we're talking about the players that are battling for spots that popped up last night. Ford and Toninato with the goal, Gustafsson with 2, Ville Heinola. We weren't really talking about a lot of the guys that, let's face it, are going to be the day in and day out guys that really are going to determine what happens with the Winnipeg Jets. And more questions on the blue line, not necessarily about the younger players, but about the veterans. And as I say, I think it's a fool's game to get into too much or make too much about preseason games. But for the young players that are trying to make this team, it really does matter. And we heard Rick Bowness, let's just talk about Ville right off the bat. We heard Rick Bowness say that these next couple games, Ville Heinola is going to, determine where he stands going into the regular season. If that is not lip service to the situation, he did himself another big favor last night as he continues to be a very impactful player in the preseason. And I'm fascinated to see what this lineup looks like for Thursday night, Reem, because if Philly's in, who is out, and what this team is thinking about a blue line that we assumed the top 6 was pretty much set and guys were fighting for a spot just to be on the roster. Ville Heinola is making a statement or making a case for himself to not only be on the team, but be in the lineup when the puck drops next week in Calgary.
Yeah. Preseason, as I said yesterday, it's preseason. It's not the regular season. For veteran, established players, don't read into anything you see. But for players who are on the bubble or trying to make an impression, trying to make the team like Gustafsson, Toninato, Heinola, Ford, Jeffrey Viel, all those guys, getting on the score sheet yesterday. And for Ville Heinola, he's done everything, that you could ask of him and more. And I don't know how you don't give this guy extended look at the NHL. It'd be such like a slap in the face if you said, sorry, Bill, you did everything, but, you're the easiest to send down. I think he's shown through his play. He's earned it. It actually reminds me, Huss, of working at a previous company where you've done everything that you asked you for the promotion. And they're like, yeah, we're going to give you the promotion on this day. And then when it's time for that, they say, oh, no, sorry, there's a hiring freeze. I don't think that's going to happen here with Ville Heinola. So I think he's ready. He's shown he deserved an extended look. Look at all the analytics. He's up there every game. I don't know. I think it would just be. I don't think you can jerk him around anymore. He's earned it, and they have to find a way to do what they need to do to get him in the lineup.
Well, I guess the question is, how do you do that? Because are veterans going to lose their spot in the lineup based on the preseason? I don't know whether that's going to happen. We certainly know that the organization and the coaching staff in the past has, leaned on and trusted veteran players more than young players. But at a certain point, at what point do you get the trust? You got to go out there and play. I do agree with you, though, that I think I don't know what happens to the relationship between the player and the organization if he does go straight down again after the training camp and the preseason that he's had. There's players like this in all organizations that feel that they should be in the lineup or they should. Frankly, most players probably feel that they're capable of doing things at another level. But this is a little different. This is a first-round pick that has excelled at the American Hockey League level. He wasn't great last year when he played in the National Hockey League. I do think there may be on some of his biggest fans, there's maybe a little revisionist history about what happened when he went in the lineup last year in limited time. But that really doesn't matter. We're talking about right now. And, he seems to have taken big steps going forward. There's a ton of potential. He adds something that the Winnipeg Jet blue line just does not have enough of. And we saw it last night with that beautiful goal that he scored on Jacob Markstrom in the first period right now. But it is going to be challenging. And, we'll put that out to the chat. Why not question of the day? Because I know there's big fans of Ville Heinola. If you're going to put Ville Heinola in the lineup, what are the corresponding moves? I know it's easy to say, get rid of Nate Schmidt, get rid of Neil Pionk. If it was that easy and that sort of thing, it probably would have been done. These guys are making a lot of money right now. Those contracts are, I would say both of them are probably immovable when it comes to trading them. So are you just putting a guy like Nate Schmidt in the press box and making him a $6 million vibes guy? I don't know, but I am in agreement. Like most people, I think we'd love to see more of Ville, and we'd love to see him play in real legitimate NHL action against NHL competition with the top players on the Winnipeg Jets and seeing if he can add something that has been missing to this blue line for the last little while, outside, of course, the brilliant season that Josh Morrissey had last year.
Yeah, and Morrissey certainly was excellent last year. And I think this is on, the Jets. We saw this coming, Huss. We've been saying for this summer, last summer, hey, you have this D prospect. Where is he going to play? And when you look back at the Jets, you're going to look at that summer where they traded for Schmidt and Dillon. Like, when they got, I think they got Dillon first, and then Schmidt waived his no trade later. We were all excited about the Jets defense, and then they signed Pionk long-term after that. And then you're like, well, all these spots are locked up. You don't have any room for any of these young guys. And I think if you want to manage the salary cap, it would be ideal to have guys on min salary, like an entry-level deal on your third pair or even in there. But now you have all these expensive defensemen that we've been saying, for 2 summers, hey, you got to move one of these guys to make room for, your first-round draft pick. They really didn't do anything, and now, we'll have to see what happens. Will they make the tough, you have to make tough moves as a GM. Will they make the tough move in putting one of these expensive players, sitting a couple games? Will they rotate Ville in? Because he's earned a spot, and he's kind of voiced his displeasure publicly with the lack of opportunity he's given. But, even if you thought he didn't earn it before, he's certainly earned it now with his play. And I don't know what more this guy can do in the AHL. He's earned a spot in the NHL, but how are they going to make it fit here with all their expensive salaries?
Yeah, the salaries, roster spots, and listen, I mean, the one thing that I think we can all agree on is that he needs to play. I mean, having him up as the 7th or 8th defenseman and not in the lineup, I don't think does anybody any good. But as he said, we go back to Bonus's comments last week that, these next couple of games, are going to be, very, very impactful in determining, where Ville starts the season. I think last night is another example that, he's doing everything he can to make that decision as difficult as possible, because there is a reality to it. He is the easiest person for them to send down, and there's no risk to it whatsoever. It does get more complicated when you want a spot and when you want to put him in. Never mind that top 6, just on the roster right now. And I mean, I will remind people that probably a lot of you that are yelling for Ville right now, and listen, I'm part of that group, was talking about Declan Chisholm probably being ahead of him 2 weeks ago. So, as they say, we're living in the present right now. This has been, we're 5 preseason games in. It's been a mishmash of lineups. It's been a mishmash of competition that the team has been playing against. But that's all we've got to go on right now. Bottom line for the player, he has definitely put his best foot forward right now. And, maybe they weren't planning on being in this situation, but I think they are in this situation. And I, like most people, think they got to find a way to give him the opportunity to get into the NHL lineup early in the season. And see if he can, have better results than, the guys that have been doing it for the past couple of years.
Yeah, and one thing, too, there has been some injury and illness stuff, and it's possible this decision gets kicked down the road. But he's, again, on Ville, he certainly earned it. We'll see what happens with that and all the defensemen there. Again, we've been talking about this, in terms of Winnipeg Sports Talk, like, popular topics over the last, 2 years. Like, we got Dubois, Shafley Hellebuck. What are they going to do with all these defensemen at number 3? If you ask me, the one other position battle we've kind of been talking. We thought it was David Gustafson's to win. He was in the driver's seat. Parker Ford, leading the team in points here in the preseason, coming out of nowhere. But Gustafson, 2 goals. I mean, more goals last night in one preseason game than all of his 71 NHL games combined, where he has 1 goal. But I think Gus, he's going to be the guy. Parker Ford, and him and Toninato, I guess, would be the first call-up after Harkins was waived. But I think Gustafson still in the driver's seat on the Gus bus heading into the season.
Yeah, that was big. And for a guy that has been so snake-bit scoring at the NHL level, the fact that he got 2 goals in a freaking preseason game has got to be, great for him in the short term, but also somewhat frustrating that those will disappear forever into the ether when the season gets going because they don't count. But that was a big game for David. I think people realize that he's very good defensively. He has been a guy that, again, at the AHL level has shown that he can do it in both ends. But, really kind of projects to be more of a 13th forward. Although, play like, you did last night, maybe you're starting to compete for that 4th-line center spot that it looks like Rasmus Kupari is going to be starting in. All I will say to that is I think Gus has done enough to get his spot on the roster. Of course, he's also not waiver exempt, so if they were to put Gus on waivers, they'd risk losing him, like happened yesterday with Jansen Harkins. It's not the case with Parker Ford. But Parker Ford, once again, and it was a beautiful give and go on that first one between Gus and Parker, he continues to turn heads, Reem, and I think it's most likely he'll start the season with the Manitoba Moose. But he is absolute. Oh, I guess I should touch wood. We know how injured and how sick this team is. Maybe they don't need to make that decision for a little bit. Bottom line is he's going to be a very early call-up if the situation arises for the Winnipeg Jets. And I'll tell you what, Dominic Toninato has had a great camp as well to kind of keep his name in the mix despite being sent down and waived.
Yeah, Tom Tornado scoring yesterday. It's funny, Parker Ford assisting on Gustafson's goal. The two guys, competing with each other for that final spot, but he's come in and he's impressed. But I tweeted out the pre-draft scouting report on him that said he's got a motor. He's got that kind of little ball of energy type player. But we saw his shot on that one-timer against Calgary here last week. There's certainly some skill there, some nice passing here. Again, leading the Jets in preseason scoring. Would have never guessed that about Parker Ford. So, that's a really nice find. Undrafted free agent. And look, he played, 8 games with the Moose last year, had 4 points. And I agree. I'll probably start with the Moose, but he would be an early call-up if and when injuries do occur.
Yeah, here's an interesting one from Mahoney. Unless a player projects to be a top 9 forward, top 6 defense, should fans concern themselves about waiver losses or gains? I mean, you're basically describing replacement level players, Rob. So, I would say not very much. I mean, listen, if it's a young player or something, the guy's got a real high potential that potentially has a ceiling to get up to. Declan Chisholm's a perfect example of that right now. I mean, the worry about not having Declan Chisholm, with the Winnipeg Jets in game number 1, I don't think, it's not like people are going to go crazy if he's not in the opening day lineup. But for a guy that's shown so much at the AHL level that hasn't had a chance to do it in the NHL, if you lose that guy without ever getting a chance to really see him play in the NHL, that is a concern. But the Harkins, the Toninatos, Axel Jonsson-Fjallby, who the Jets got on waivers last year, those are, with all due respect to them for the most part, replacement level players. Fourth line guys are often available on the waiver wire. That's basically who they are. They're guys that just aren't in the depth chart on one team, but would be up on another's and get a chance to go somewhere else. So, listen, if you've put a lot into players and you're losing them for nothing, and I know everyone goes back to the Johnny Kovacevic situation last year, and Johnny's really proven himself that, maybe there's more to him that the organization expected, or, been a victim of numbers. But for a player like a Gustafson, like a Chisholm, that they have put a lot into, I think I would be pretty concerned about losing players like that. And that Remo has shaped so many of these conversations, which really started of training camp thinking that Ville was almost assuredly going to the Moose, just because what keeping him on the roster would mean for the other decisions they had to make and potentially players they lose.
Yeah, well said. And back to the original question, they did lose Jansen Harkins yesterday. We talked about that, and he'd kind of fallen out of favor with the organization, and wasn't able to take advantage of the opportunities. And look, sometimes those kind of picks doesn't work. It doesn't work out. What was he? Mid-round pick, I think 2015. So you wish him all the best in Pittsburgh, and a number of well wishes there. And I think, it's funny you talk about the waiver wire, like Ottawa's waiving, former first rounders, no problem. They waived Lassie, who got claimed by Anaheim, and the other one they're going to waive, or they did waive today, Jacob Bernard Docker, who was a former, high pick as well. So look, sometimes you got to make tough decisions. That's part of it. And I'm sure some tough ones are going to come up as we get to the start of the season. A week away?
Yeah, every team has really tough decisions to make right now, some tougher than others. But yeah, we are going to see players, and Logan Stanley could absolutely end up on the waiver wire. He probably gets picked by somebody like Lassie did, but at a certain point, you realize this is your plot. These are the players. These are your assets. If you're going to be sending a guy out, you see if you can get something for him. Usually the answer is no, because they all know that you're about to put the guy on waivers. And he goes there and either passes and gets to your AHL team, or gets a fresh start with another organization like Harkins had yesterday. But it is a precarious situation. I think about what Nashville did with Eli Tolvanen. He very quickly got picked up by Seattle and then ended up being a really impactful player. This is a talented young guy that just hadn't clicked at the NHL level yet, but did. Unfortunately for Nashville, he did it for another team. So, we'll get into this with Billeck coming up. The other thing, though, we should quickly talk about, Remo, though, before we get to Ted Wyman. is Elias Salmonson. Now, I think myself, pretty much everyone thought that Elias would come. He would have a great experience playing in the Prospects tournament and getting a chance to go up against NHL competition, and then would head back to Sweden. But Elias has, in fact, been sent to the Manitoba Moose. And shout out to Julian in chat who threw this into the Discord. An article from one of the Swedish newspapers that Skellefteå, Elias's team, are going to have to wait because he, in fact, has not been sent back to Sweden. He's been sent to the American Hockey League. And, we'll talk more Moose as we get closer to their home opener. By the way, they got a big sale right now. $10 home opener tickets for the next 10 hours. Check out moosehockey.com for that. This is really intriguing. And I mean, I know this maybe Elias will be the next Ville if Ville's on the team. When's this guy going to be there? I still think that he is the number one defense prospect in the organization. And the fact that he might be here very close to the big club, I think is pretty intriguing right now.
Yeah, Julian sent me this article and I put it through Google Translate, which we know how accurate and reliable that is. But it says he's sent to the AHL and they'll be informed, his Swedish club, if he'll return or not. I think Friday. It says they have they'll know. So it's not completely certain that he is coming back right now. And the Jets have the right, and they'll have to wait for a couple days and see. And what we last saw Salmonson in that preseason game against Edmonton, or not, in Ottawa, where he took the high hit. I think he was skating. Yes, he is on the ice. Dave Minuk tweeting out he is on the ice today for practice. So that was positive to hear, and certainly an interesting prospect that we talked about all summer, to the point where I was like, is this hype getting too much for, a second-round pick? And there he was, day one, paired with Josh Morrissey. So the team obviously thinks very highly of him, and they would want to have him in Manitoba in case, for a call-up if necessary, or just to get used to the North American game, because maybe a call-up is...
A bit of both.
It's like more sooner than you think, a possible call-up.
Well, and he played at a really high level last year on a top team, playing big minutes, and seems like he's going to be ready to kind of get into the North American game. Many people thought that, it was just NHL or bust. Here's the thing, though. They have to send a player back if they're in their first year of the NHL contract. But he signed his contract with Winnipeg last summer. So... And the guy said it applies. It only applies under certain conditions, and in this case, it is that Winnipeg has the right to make the decisions. So the Swedish team is going to wait. We'll have Elias here in Winnipeg for the time being, playing with the Manitoba Moose. And tell you what, especially if Ville Heinola is going to be working his way onto the squad with the Winnipeg Jets, probably creates a big opportunity for Elias to get some big, important minutes playing for the Manitoba Moose. All right, we're going to talk to Ted Wyman coming up. More Jets talk with Scott Billeck coming up in a little bit. Before we do that, I want to give a big shout out to our friends at Modern Man Barber Shops, now with 8 locations in Winnipeg. You can visit the newest locations on either Pembina Highway or Plessis Road. Heading there tomorrow for a cut. Modern Man Barbershops offer a variety of grooming services, including haircuts, beard shaping, shaves, color services, and more. Book your look and make an appointment via modernmanbarber.com, and you can give them a follow on Instagram at Modern Man Barbershops. Well, with this weather now, I think we can officially say that pool season is over. Aquatech, the experts on all things pools, but they're also the experts on whole home renovations. With thousands of renos as their foundation, Aquatech can upgrade any space in your home. If you're ready to enhance your kitchen, bathroom, or even add a man cave to your home, visit aqua-tech.ca to learn more about their whole home renovations, including financing options. And hey, shout out to Donnie and the gang at Manitoba Battery. We're officially into October. Before we know it, I hate to bring this up, but the snow will be flying, and winter is just around the corner. Be ready for it. Manitoba Battery got us through all the good times with batteries for all the fun stuff of summer. Now it's down to business and getting through the Winnipeg winter. You've got to have a battery. Testing available for your battery at 1026 Logan Avenue if you want to pop in. But get the best price on car, truck batteries, and more at Manitoba Battery, and they'll deliver it to you for free anywhere in the city of Winnipeg with any purchase over $60. It's that easy. Check them out and order online at manitobabattery.com. Give Donnie and his great staff a call at 783-8787 or pop by and see him in person at 1026 Logan Avenue. And hey, a big cheers to our friends at Canadian Club, official spirit of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. I know it's not a home game this weekend, but it's a big one on Friday night. You want to pop by your local Manitoba liquor marts and get your CC ready for the weekend. And of course, CC and Ginger pre-mixed cocktails. You can pick those up at your local Manitoba liquor marts as well, or your local beer store. All right, coming up a little later on, we're going to have Scotty Billeck, but great Bomber news today. It sounds like Janarian Grant is back in practice. And let's welcome in Ted Wyman from the Winnipeg Sun to get the latest on the blue and gold going into the biggest game of the year. Ted, what's going on? How are you?
I'm doing great, Huss. I know you want to talk about the Blue Bombers and BC Lions, and I just want to say, pretty exciting to be involved in writing about this game this week, because I can't remember a regular season game that had this kind of magnitude for the Bombers in quite some time.
I'm with you. I was on in Calgary this morning talking, some Jet stuff, and then we got into this Bombers, and I'm like, this game is as big, Ted, as any regular season game I can remember, in that not only are these teams playing for first place, but for better or worse, this game is worth 2 games in the standings because they're tied. It is also the rubber match. So, I mean, whoever wins this game is going to be a game up in the standings, but we'll also have that tiebreaker. So, for all intents and purposes, it kind of feels like a playoff game in which no team is eliminated, but man, you lose this one and the path to the Grey Cup becomes a heck of a lot longer.
Yeah, it feels more than just a little like a playoff game to me. It feels very much like a playoff game, and one that we may see again, right? I mean, it's there's no reason to think that anybody but the Bombers and Lions will be playing in the West Final this year. It's always possible somebody will pull off an upset, but it doesn't seem likely. These have been the top 2 teams in the division all season long, and I think the rubber match makes it really interesting because BC kicked the crap out of the Bombers in the first game, and the Bombers absolutely destroyed BC in the second game. The only factor in there that maybe makes it a little bit hard to say, that BC was so horribly beaten in the Winnipeg, the second Winnipeg game, is that Vernon Adams didn't play, and he is having an outstanding season. There's absolutely no question about it. But you go into BC now and you have this game. There's going to be a big crowd there. The Lions are revitalized. They've got great fans behind them. And as I just alluded to, VA is playing very good football. They've got all their receivers ready to go this week. They're going to be ready for this Bomber team, and I do not see this being any kind of a walk in the park for either team, even though both teams had blowout wins this year. This should be a close one, should be very exciting. One real big thing that's on the Bomber side is that they've played really well in BC Place in recent years, especially when Zach Collaros is playing. Last year, Drew Brown started in BC, and it didn't go as well. But when Zach Collaros has been playing, this team has been on fire. And they like playing in BC Place. The offense has done well there.
Well, and I mean, as you alluded to before, I mean, the stakes are so high. And listen, talking about this Bomber team and their path to get back to the Grey Cup and a shot at likely the Toronto Argonauts, the home field advantage in the Western Final to me is everything. Like, BC came in and did what they did to the Bombers early on in the season, and as you mentioned, the Bombers got them back. But that's far more realistic to pull off in early July than be a dome team coming to the Prairies and trying to win in front of a madhouse in mid-November. And that is exactly what this team is playing for right now. And you mentioned Zach Collaros. I mean, I look at this team, and I have no doubts that the offense is going to be productive and will put the points on the board. To me, this game is going to be on the backs of the defense, Ted. And can the Winnipeg Blue Bomber defense do enough to minimize the offensive output of BC and maybe turn the game, flip the game, if you will, with a few turnovers? I mean, are you seeing that in a similar way?
I really am. And I mean, even last week, the game against Toronto, the Bombers are out there against Cameron Dukes and an Argos offense that wasn't really 100% because they didn't have Chad Kelly in there. They had a guy making his first career start, and they got it shoved down their throats in the first quarter. The Argos went down and scored 2 touchdowns, and that just seemed really wrong. There's just something not absolutely right with this Bombers defense. They did turn it around. They did play very well as that game went along, and they did keep the Argos from scoring more. The Bombers were able to come back and win it. As we all know that win comes with an asterisk because there's just no question in my mind that the Argos were not at their best. Their coaching staff was not particularly focused on trying to win, but more focused on trying to see what they have in terms of their backups. But the defense needs to start fast, and it needs to play 60 minutes. This Bomber team can't afford lapses, and this is where there's been issues this year. There's been a certain amount of inconsistency. We saw it. It goes back quite a ways, but they had a big lapse against Ottawa, and they lost to Dustin Crum and the Red Blacks. They had an early lapse against Edmonton. They fell down 22-0 to Trey Ford and the Elks. They didn't play very well against Jake Dolegala and the Saskatchewan Roughriders, and Dolegala has not won a game since then. They didn't play that well against Taylor Powell. He got pulled the next week. I mean, there's a lot of question marks for me on that Blue Bomber defense. It starts up front. They're better, obviously, when Jackson Jeffcoat's in there, but they have not really been getting to the quarterback the way that they used to, or you might expect them to. Willie Jefferson now 8 games without a sack. I don't know that you can pin it all on Willie. Of course you can't, but now I'm not sure what the situation is going to be with Demario Houston. He left the last game. There is some question marks with that team. And as you said, we know Zach Collaros is very likely to go out there and put up some points for this team. When you've got Brady Oliveira and you've got Nick Dembski and you've got Kenny Lawler and you've got Dalton Schoen on offense and a great offensive line, you're going to do it. So it's going to come down to, as you said, how well this defense can contain Vernon Adams and that host of excellent receivers that he can throw to.
Yeah, listen, it's a great point, Ted. And listen, I mean, this defense has been so good for so long. And the one thing I think we can all lean on is that they've come up big when they have needed it. They've come up big in the big games in the past. And this is as big a game as you'll see in the regular season period as we've laid out. But sometimes this defensive unit sort of gets a little complacent. I mean, I had the feeling at IG Field on Friday night that the defense was basically, getting like the fans were all in on this conversation about Chad Kelly not starting and thinking that they were benching all their good guys. I mean, they just didn't seem ready to go right out of the gate. I don't imagine that there'll be any question that this team will be prepared and ready to go for this game. And, we need to see that Bomber defense in the second half and, basically the best of the Bomber defense right out of the gate, because that BC is going to be ready to go. And this is a huge proving game for British Columbia, Ted. I mean, I think back to the way they handled the big win earlier in the season. Remember, they came in, they were the Donut Boys, and they left as the Burger Boys after the Bombers dropped 50 on them. But I'm sure they've had a long time to think about this. They've been playing well as of late. And, it just sets up an absolutely fascinating matchup. But to me, it's the focus. It's not the ability of the Bomber defense. It's the focus to be ready to be at their best at kickoff and do it for a full 60 minutes. If they do that, I think they can win this football game.
It's the story of the Bombers season. You already summed it up. I mean, they keep talking about it. Mike O'Shea talks about it. Drew Olatarski's talked about it repeatedly. Zach Collaros talked about it. Inconsistency has been what has really hurt this team. And every time I've asked any one of them, what does inconsistency mean to you? What does that look like? And it's always comes down to focus. It's just there seems to be something going on where there seems to be a dip in focus with this team, whether it's complacency, whether it's looking ahead past, hey, the bye week is next week, and just not being 100%. It's not something you expect from this team. I certainly would not have imagined that a Mike O'Shea team would have that situation because he's so good at keeping his team focused. All of his coordinators are very good at that as well. But there just seems to be a bit of that going on this year. And I do believe that they talked about it before last week and said, this is something we have to look in the mirror. We have to make sure we're not the one who's losing focus and allowing something to happen here. Well, the fact that they barely got by Toronto in a game where not only did Toronto not start their top quarterback and most outstanding player candidate in Chad Kelly, but in the fourth quarter, they actually put in a third-string quarterback just to get a look at him, as though it was a preseason game. And as far as I'm concerned, Ryan Dinwiddie treated like that like a preseason game. The Bombers were treating it like a game that they had to win to try to get first place. Mm-hmm. And for the fact that it was as close as it was, the Bombers didn't even take the lead until late in the fourth quarter, really suggests to me that it just wasn't exactly what the Bombers were looking for. They're going to need to be much better against this BC team. And as you pointed out, it's going to have to be from start to finish. You can't have those lapses. They have to get the defensive line is going to have to get their hands on Vernon Adams. I've talked to numerous people about that. They're saying the Bombers defensive line is doing a good job still. They're still getting the pressures. Those aren't stats that are kept by the CFL, but they're being seen by the coaching staff. They're getting close. They're getting hands on guys, but they're not bringing them down. They're going to have to finish those plays. They're going to have to start bringing Vernon Adams down. They can't let him extend plays with his legs. He's had an excellent season. And like I said before, when you've got Rhymes and Hatcher and Whitehead and all those players to throw to, you've got something pretty special going on there in BC. So, and I really do believe that crowd is going to be fired up and going to make it difficult. This is one of the toughest tasks we've seen the Blue Bombers have to prepare for in a very long time. They're doing it with a couple of days of practice. It's going to be very interesting to see if they can really come out and put together that 60-minute effort.
I mean, they're going to need a win in BC one way or the other, because if they don't get it on Friday, they'll be heading back there, assuming that they win the West Semi, which adds a whole nother step, and BC will have the bye. I mean, there's just so much at stake on the table for this game, and I can't wait for it. You mentioned Jackson Jeffcoat, and he quietly, to me, is such a difference maker on that defensive line. And kind of mentioned some of the things that might not show up in the stat sheet. Certainly, Willie's been far more effective, when Jackson's been in. And frankly, you look at the BC game where the Bombers got throttled. He was out, and he was out again for the Hamilton game where they didn't perform well. So having him back is definitely a good start. We'll get some more injury clarity on Houston and some of the others as we get closer to the game. Just stepping back from the task at hand, and that's the Bombers needing to win this football game on Friday. You've covered this team in this league for a long time. Just wanted to comment on the historic nature of the local boys this season. Brady Oliveira's monster season. I mean, what a game he had last week against the Toronto Argonauts, along with Nick Dembski. And we were talking to Ed Tate. This will be the first ever two Canadians to go 1,000 rushing and 1,000 receiving in the same year. And that's Canadians, never mind local products, hell, guys from the same high school. It's just an incredible story.
Yeah, I'll plug it already. That's my plan, is to write about that today, Huss. So, I think that's such a neat story. It's really quite incredible. And it brings up another point to me, and that's that, I'm a member of the Football Reporters of Canada. We vote on the most outstanding player awards for the CFL, but the way that it's done is you have to vote locally and pick one player and send them forward to represent the West, etc. And in my mind, the best two most outstanding Canadian players in the CFL this year are Brady Oliveira and Nick Dembski. It's sad that one of them won't even get out of Winnipeg and have a chance to go forward and represent the West Division. I think Brady Oliveira is the guy that I'm going to vote for at this moment. He's just had that incredible season. It's been dynamic, but it's just kind of too bad that Dembski can't also get a nomination because he's been so good. I mean, this has been a stellar year for Nick Dembski. He's the league leader in deep ball receptions. I mean, how great is that when you consider some of the elite talent that's here, American players? Nick Dembski's a Canadian U of M guy, Oak Park guy. And there he is, showing his talents as the best deep threat in the CFL. And He's got nearly 1,000 points. He's going to get there, nearly 1,000 yards, I should say. He's going to get there soon. Brady Oliveira's already well over 1,000 yards. And honestly, if Brady Oliveira, and we don't know what the last couple of games are going to look like, depending on whether the Bombers have clinched playoff spots or clinched home field or anything like that or not. But if Brady Oliveira were to play the final 3 games and put up the kind of numbers he's been putting up lately, he's had more than 100 yards 7 times this year. He really could put his name in the history books. He could be the second best season of all time by a Canadian running back, with only John Cornish ahead of him. And that, to me, would be something pretty special. And he's got a lot of touchdowns. He's got a lot of receptions. This is really something special. Not something I can say that I saw coming with Brady. I mean, Nick has just gotten better and better as the years go on. He's 30 now, and he's playing his best. He's almost 30, I think, and he's playing his best football. Brady Oliveira, I thought would be a capable replacement for Andrew Harris. I never really imagined that he was going to be better in at least this season than in any season Andrew Harris has ever had. I mean, if he continues this, he's not far off from beating Andrew Harris's career high, which is honestly, it's just something so impressive. And it's been a lot of fun to watch, and it's pretty great when local guys are making that kind of a contribution. You heard the guys talking about it on TSN the other day. It's kind of unheard of in the Canadian Football League, where guys that are local are making that big of a contribution to a team. I can think back to maybe Chris Getzlaff in Regina being, such an important player for them. But other than that, it's something that's unique and special, and I think fans should enjoy it because it's been something that's worked out really well for this franchise.
Well, and just to Brady's performance, we talk about the local connections. I mean, regardless of whether Andrew Harris was from Winnipeg or not, I mean, he was filling the shoes of an all-time CFL great and a guy that's going straight to the Hall of Fame at his first opportunity. And that comes with a lot of pressure, Ted. And it wasn't always smooth right at the get-go. But, I mean, he seems to get better and better each and every game. Obviously, the offensive line is a big, big part of it. But when you think about the shoes that he was filling, to be honest, it makes it even more impressive what he's been able to do. And when you talk to him, it's very clear that he doesn't just want to be an adequate fill-in for the guy that was here before. He wants to create his own name, his own history, and he's doing that this season.
Yeah, he doesn't even like the comparisons to Andrew Harris. He doesn't think that that's right. It's not. They're not the same player. They do things a little bit differently. What they do have in common is something you just mentioned, which is pretty much the same offensive line, and that's that's something that we absolutely have to recognize, that those players on that offensive line are built for a running attack, and you plug just about anybody in there, they're going to do pretty well. I'm not going to say they're going to do as well as Brady Oliveira has done, but when Johnny Augustine's in there, he does well too. It's all I'm saying. Not to take anything away from Brady, because the fact that he's gotten better and better all season long, he's set his career high for rushing yards 3 times this year already. He's catching balls out of the backfield. He's scoring touchdowns. He's running guys over. He loves to have that first contact, and he does not like to be brought down on first contact. And he tends to get through the line. And if he gets to the second level, he can really go. But, he hasn't broken a ton of big runs this year. He's putting up these kind of numbers, picking up 8, 9 at a time. But 8, 9 at a time is huge, because you're getting, when they've got Dakota Prukop, who's almost guaranteed to get you a first down, if you get 8, 9, it's good enough, and it really helps the Bombers win first down. It really helps them build their offense when everyone knows that they can run it the way they can. Well, hey, they also have a pretty amazing quarterback in Zach Collaros, and he can throw it to guys like Kenny Lawler and Dalton Schoen and Nick Dembski. It makes for as dynamic an offense as you're going to see. Now, there has been some inconsistency, particularly from Collaros, because he's thrown 14 interceptions this year. 4 were for pick sixes. But I did hear Dave Naylor talk on the TSN panel one day about he could not remember a team that had the offensive players, the likes of Oliveira, Dembski, Schoen, and Lawler all on one squad with all that talent. So it's just symbiotic. It's that O-line, it's that great passing game that the Bombers have, and it's Oliveira's ability to hit the holes and knock people over and pick up just enough yards, to move the sticks for the Bombers. I really think it's been impressive, and it's hard to use enough words to describe how good Oliveira has been. To me, unexpected is the biggest one. I just didn't think he'd be this good, but good on him for making it happen.
Ted Wyman, Winnipeg Sun with us. We're going to be speaking with your colleague Scott Billeck on the Jets. Just before we go, though, Ted, what are your expectations? What are you feeling about this club going in? I mean, they haven't really been able to get the full squad out in the preseason. They got one more chance to do it. Ehlers won't apparently play on Thursday. I think the team's a little deeper. We'll see whether they can score. Cole Perfetti, still tons of questions about this club. First and foremost, how they get down to their roster in time for the game next week in Calgary.
Absolute uncertainty for me, Huss. I mean, I just don't know how you can predict what to expect from this team, because we haven't seen that they haven't had any healthy roster. They've got guys sick all over the place this weekend. It has not been an easy time in this training camp, and of course, they're making a pretty big transition, right? You're taking Blake Wheeler and Pierre-Luc Dubois out of that locker room. That's a lot of points. That's a lot of strong offensive play, and it's also going to be a pretty big change in the leadership of this team. So how does that translate on the ice? I just don't know. I just don't know how you make that prediction. I think what I would normally look at in this situation is that, in my mind, this team needed a culture change. You've taken the leader of the former culture out. They're trying to make that change. The question is, how well will that succeed? Because I think last year you saw when this team was playing the way that Rick Bowness wanted them to play early in the season, they were an extremely good team near the top of the NHL. When they started getting away from that, they dipped, and they were one of the worst teams in the league for 15 games and flopped out of the playoffs pretty quickly. So which of those two are we going to see, or which of those two are we more likely to see? I think it's probably going to be the former. I think they're probably going to play better with a different culture in there, better with the systems and whatnot. Maybe not as much talent, and maybe some more raw talent with the guys who have come in from Los Angeles, but still a lot of skill there. And still, if you can play the bonus way, I think you have a chance to be successful. But again, there's so many question marks, because if you've got a lot of injuries, if you've got still these question marks hanging over your head about Mark Scheifele and Connor Hellebuck, all that kind of stuff can play into taking that down a bit. So again, my prediction is that this team has the potential to play quite good hockey, but it also is going to be kind of a thin ice situation as to, they're a bit fragile at this point. Can they really build that up and have that strength to play a whole season and be consistent? That's another big question for me.
No doubt about it. Ted Wyman's with us. Hey, just quickly before we go, I couldn't believe it. I'm flicking the television in the midst of a wild sports weekend, and there's our pal Reed Carruthers and Matty Dunstone going head-to-head in the points bet. And, of course, Carey Anderson get to the final. Crazy that curling is in full swing already, but it is. But how about Reed pulling off back-to-back wins for $50K in that points bet invitational?
Yeah, it's pretty amazing that his team has flourished so much in that particular format, because in case people don't know, that's a single knockout event. 16 teams, you lose, you're out. And Reed Carruthers has never lost a game there. But, I really am very intrigued by the Reed Carruthers team this year, because he's added a guy who I think is one of the very best curlers on the planet in Brad Jacobs as his third. There's very few people who throw the rock better than Brad Jacobs. The guy's an Olympic gold medalist. He's a Brier champion. He's been in the Brier final a bunch of times. He's so good. And I think everyone in curling respects Reed Carruthers as a skip, and everyone respects his team, the guys that he's got with him. You add a force like Brad Jacobs to that lineup, man, does that ever have a chance to be successful? And really get up there and compete with Brad Gushue and Brendan Botcher and even Matty Dunstone, whose team I think has really stepped into the elite level. but there is so much elite talent this year in men's curling, and I really like how potentially Carruthers is going to, make that an even deeper field of teams who could win. And I guess maybe he hopes the Brier will go to a single knockout format, because that's really looking for him.
Well, I can tell you, both Reed and Matt Dunstone are good friends of the show, and we knew Manitoba was going to win one way or the other, but it was great to see those guys have great starts to the season. Ted, awesome chat as always. We'll look forward to your coverage all week in the Winnipeg Sun of the Bombers, leading into the biggest regular season game we've had in this league in a long, long time. Friday night, BC Place. Cannot wait for it. Have a good one. We'll talk to you soon, buddy.
Thanks, Huss. I just wanted to say one thing. Since you touched on curling, Manitoba lost a great curler this past week, Lois Fowler, 68 years old, from Brandon. She was a 4-time Scotties champion and a World Senior Women's champion, and really a great friend of the game of curling, well known by everybody. And I just wanted to throw a shout out to her and her family, and say sorry for their loss.
Appreciate that, Ted. Awesome, buddy. That was great.
Yeah, the only thing is, man, Janarian might be on the field. We'll find out in like 10 minutes, but unfortunately, there's not. I didn't want to say anything because I didn't want to say that we weren't live. But if he's on the field, that's going to be.
Yeah, well, you know what, we can
I'll leave it to you to play with that however you want.
Yeah. If we'll pay attention on that, and we can clip it or pop it in the report, or just say, hey, I caught up with Ted before practice today.
Yeah. See how that works. But yeah, they're going to be on the field in 10 minutes, so we'll know soon.
Okay, you're the best, buddy. Thanks so much.
Cheers, man. Take it easy.
Right on.
Bye.
All right, great stuff with Teddy. His colleague, Scott Billeck, coming up next to get back to the Jets beat. But again, the big news coming out of Bombers practice just in the last hour or so. Janarian Grant back on the field, practicing with the club, which is very good news for Friday's huge game against the BC Lions. All right, just before we bring in Scotty, big shout out to our friends at Vita Health Fresh Market. If you're looking for great prices on natural and organic supplements, beauty products, groceries, and Winnipeg's largest selection of local products too, pop by one of 6 Vita Health Fresh Market stores or online at myvita.ca with a fully shoppable website with local delivery. And right now, get a free gift when you place an order for $100 or more at myvita.ca. Now, don't let the stress of back to school or the upcoming holidays get to you. Try Health First Ashwagandha Supreme. Oh, I can't believe I nailed that one. Known for stress lowering effects, ashwagandha is effective for reducing mental stress, anxiety, cortisol levels, and even stress-related food cravings. Health First Ashwagandha Supreme is on sale all month at Vita Health Fresh Market. Family-owned and operated since 1936, empowering people to lead healthy lives. 6 locations in Winnipeg and online at myvita.ca. Well, your overhead door for your garage has had lots of ups and downs this summer. Working hard to get you and your family to all that fun summer travel that you had and just the day-to-day grind. But your garage door is about to work a whole lot harder because winter puts much more stress on a garage door. The right time to prevent downtime this winter is now. Call Wallace & Wallace to book your inspection and maintenance service call today. For residential and commercial overhead door sales and service, there's only one name or two you need to know, and that is Wallace & Wallace. You can find out more online as well at wallacedoors.com. Fellas, October is here. The winter is just around the corner. How's the closet looking? If you open it up and realize, I need to step up my menswear game, there's only one place you need to go, and that is F Apparel, with custom suits beginning at $400, along with chinos, golf pants, custom shirts, both tucked and untucked styles, and an incredible selection of menswear accessories. 15% discount for wedding parties as well. For more information or to make an appointment, check them out online at that's EPHapparel.com, and pop down and see them in person at 190 Smith Street downtown. And hey, big shout out to Nick and Nikki DQ. 4 locations. You want to hang on to summer a little longer? Well, the summer blizzard flavors are still kicking around at Nick and Nikki DQ. You can grab one at DQ Northgate, DQ Polo Park, DQ St. Anne's, or DQ Niverville. And speaking of Niverville, their new Pita Pit is now open as well. You can pop down and see them at the new one. Healthy, fresh, delicious Pita Pit. And, of course, great catering options as well. Pop by and see them, or check them out on X at Pita Pit Niverville. All right, let's get Scotty Billeck in here and keep the Jets talk going on WST. Billeck, what's up, man? How are you?
I'm good. Getting over the flu. A little salty that I'm not on the road with Ken Wiebe and Mike McIntyre to the AL wildcard game today and tomorrow. But, them's the breaks, I guess, right? So, other than that, good. Glad to be over this flu. I fault the Jets. But, it is what it is.
You know what? I mean, it kind of has become a growing story, frankly, over the course of the past week. I mean, the roster that was supposed to go to Calgary was nothing like the one that took the ice last night. At the same time, though, Scott, I think it really allowed a bunch of players that, are fighting for spots on the roster to kind of step up and stake their claim. Ville Heinola at the top of that list, and, of course, 2 goals for David Gustafsson. And Parker Ford setting both of those up as well. Yeah. The good from last night's game, the fact that a number of these younger players, or fringe players, if you will, are doing what they have to do to make decisions really tough. The other side of it is that we're not really seeing a lot from the guys that, are sort of expected to be the mainstays on this club right now with only one preseason game left.
Yeah, it's weird, right? Because you're trying to get a grasp of who the Winnipeg Jets are, and I think Rick Bowness is also trying to get a grasp of who the Winnipeg Jets are, and I'm not sure any of us really kind of know yet. I mean, I think one of the biggest questions going into the season was always going to be, what is this team going to look like, right? But I think, as camp went along, and they were healthy, at least at the start of camp. Obviously, Nikolai Ehlers had his neck spasms, but for the most part, the Connor, Scheifele, Balharry line, that looked good in the game that they played. They obviously had that really nice power play goal there. So you started to see some things, and you were seeing, the third line with Adam Lowry and Alex Iafallo and Mason Appleton. Okay, well, that's going to be a good checking line. And fourth line was coming together, and you liked what you see from Cole Perfetti and Nino Niederreiter. Obviously, you hadn't seen him with Ehlers, but you just figure, okay, well, you get a guy with great speed and a great shot in Ehlers, and you pair him with a guy with a great vision and great ability to pass like Perfetti, and it's just going to work, right? But as it's gone on, you were the hope, I think, for obviously for the Jets coaching staff was that Ehlers would get healthy and you wouldn't, you would stay healthy. And obviously, it's not even injuries really that's kind of getting this team down for the most part. It's this flu that's going through the locker room, which kind of robbed them of their whole top line last night and in Calgary, and others with Morgan Barron obviously being out, and so it's been a weird one. And they have one game left now, and you're trying to look to see who you would like to see what Calgary had last night, which was basically their full roster out there playing a game, and we're just not seeing that at the moment from the Winnipeg Jets. But you're right. I mean, I think the thing that we've seen because of this, and obviously, I mean, anytime that you have injuries, anytime that you have any sort of illnesses through training camp, it offers opportunities, right? And so you've seen this year, and maybe this is recency bias, but there's a lot of guys really taking advantage of I mean, Ville Heinola sticks out at the top. For me, he hasn't really. I thought his first couple of days of training camp or whatever, but you got 56 guys. Everybody's just trying to get back into it. He's been great since then, and I think last night's goal showed something that the Jets would really like to have on their blue line consistently. It's a guy that sees that is willing to activate like that, and then Cole Perfetti makes a nice backhand pass, finds him, and Heinola goes far side on a wicked shot against an NHL goaltender, and so that's what you want to see in the lineup. We'll probably get to more of him, but if we want to talk about David Gustafsson, Parker Ford, I thought the irony last night was both of them were helping each other look good last night, but there might only be fighting for one job, right? But it's good to see that competition. It's good to see David Gustafsson with a little more confidence, because I think last season really took it from him. Like 6 assists in 46 games, he struggled to score. He wasn't the center anymore. They got moved him out to the wing. It wasn't a great year for David, and frankly, that was that was his chance. But he's come back this preseason and had a good preseason to keep himself in the mix because, I guess we could say that he was probably the 13th forward on this team going into it. Like, he was kind of the incumbent at that 13th spot, and it was his to lose. I think Parker Flores put on a hell of a showing here. Undrafted college free agent signing has come in and really shown that he's turned heads, right? He's turned heads. Rick Bowness said it last week. I mean, he surprised us all, is the quote from Rick Bowness. And so I think you've seen a guy like Parker Ford who has this great motor on him, and he just keeps going and going. And he kind of reminds you a little bit of, maybe Brandon Tanev, the way that he came up. They're both from the same college, Providence. Maybe a little bit of Mikey Esamont in there too. The Jets lost on waivers last year and is now in Tampa on I believe he signed a 2-year deal there. So you hope Parker Ford gets his chance. I don't know if it's to start the season. Gustafson probably provides you a little more versatility, given that he can play center, take faceoffs. Obviously, a very good penalty killer that we've seen. But yeah, I mean, I think, last night you look at the game, you look at how beat up the Jets were or sick the Jets were, and they still held on in a 5-4 game against a very heavy, NHL-heavy Calgary Flames team. Was it great? Did they spend a lot of their time in the defensive zone? Yeah, like they did. But I didn't see a lot of giving up in that game. And so, it's preseason. You take a lot of it with a grain of salt to begin with. I just think this team would like to see more. Well, I know they would like to see more of their actual team. But right now, this is their actual team. And until guys get healthy and guys get injured, we'll see what happens. Obviously, I think these sick guys are going to get back, a lot sooner. But, does Nate Schmidt go into the season injured? And does Ville Heinola start an opening night roster? And same with maybe some guy. What happens to Nikolai Ehlers? And if Nikolai Ehlers isn't ready to go in a week, David Gustafson's probably in the lineup, or Parker Ford's probably in the lineup, depending on kind of how you kind of do it. So, this is the way it goes. I mean, you can't ever really kind of predict injuries or illnesses or whatever, but, it's shown the Jets, I think, that they have a good defenseman that they can call on right away if they need them, and they have a really good, forward as well that they can pluck into the lineup and go from their game one if they need to as well.
By the way, Andrew had said it's imperative we find out why there's a shovel hanging on Scotty's door. I believe that's a K&R shovel.
It's a K&R, yeah. Dig deeper award.
BS you guys have been shoveling for years in this community.
That's a powerful sentence, Jack. It's obviously a BS shovel.
Listen, let's listen, everyone's talking about Ville. He scores a goal like that last night. I mean, he's got a ton of fans of his that, really want to see him on the club. And listen, from what we've seen so far, I think that he's done everything he can to make a case that he should be on the team. I talked about this earlier, Scott, but I mean, I'm sure you were there. Rick Bowness was talking about Ville's situation going into these last 2 games, and he basically said he has the opportunity to earn a spot on the team with these games. Now, listen, coaches say a lot of things sometimes that may be, somewhat truthful, somewhat not. Like, I don't know whether this was just lip service to a young man that's doing everything he can to play, but is in a really bad situation because of the waiver rules and the fact that he's waivers exempt. But how does this play out? And listen, will we see him on Thursday against Ottawa? And if he has another strong game, is he, never mind on the team, could he be in the top 6 actually playing in Calgary next Wednesday?
I think the door is open. I mean, I was the one to ask a couple of those questions to Rick, and it's there for him. And that was the one quote, and the other one was, "It'll be decided over the last 2 games." And I think the fact that Ville's still here speaks a lot to how far Ville's come. I think, again, I've written about this. I think the easy road, and we all know what the easy road is here. The easy way out is simply to send him down, because it alleviates a headache that the Jets have. But my argument here for Ville is different this year, because this is a team that said often, and obviously going through the summer and the way they did, and not rebuilding and all that sort of thing, they're in win now mode. And there's a couple factors at play here. If Ville Heinola is the 6th best or the 5th best defenseman on this blue line, or the 4th best, or whatever you want to call it, and you leave him out of the roster because of a contract technicality and the waiver exemption, when you're in a win now year, I don't know what that says. Like, I think that defeats the kind of idea then that you're actually in win now. And I understand you have Nate Schmidt, you have these guys that have big contracts, but it's not like it's unprecedented for a big money player to be left out or on the periphery, while a young defenseman who's been brought up and bred in this team and developed by this team, finally makes good on his chance and really does make a good impression in training camp and shows that he's coming bigger. You look at Ville Heinola, he's just a piece of muscle now. He's not, when he came into the league, he was 181 pounds and that was soaking wet. Now he's 185. It doesn't seem like a big jump in weight, but he's a finished tank, if there is such a thing, right? And so you think about a guy like what he's done and the steps that he's done to improve, and his defense has improved, and I think we've seen that this preseason. And then you also add the fact, like, okay, it might not be super consistent for him just yet defensively, but that he has this ability to be so good offensively. And that's something, again, this team has talked so much over the last year since Rick Bowness came here, last year and a half now, that they want to have their defense activated. They want to go and they want more scoring from their defense. Well, if there's anybody in this lineup right now or in this, in this battle to kind of get in to the lineup, it's Philly. And so I think the problem is, the Jets have created this sort of on their own, is that, if you're in win now mode and Ville Heinola is the 5th or 6th best defenseman right now on this team, not just in training camp, but on the team, well, you got to play him. And the other thing is, what kind of message is it now going to send if Ville has an incredible training camp and the only thing that is keeping him away from his waiver exemption? I mean, I think you run the risk of pissing off a lot of guys, well, Ville for sure, but also being like, if you're another defenseman on this team that's in the system and you're just like, I can have the greatest camp that I've had on this team and just as good, if not better than some of the NHLers, and I'm still not getting in, like, why would I want to still play here? How many years are they going to kick Ville down the road until, now his roster does, roster exemption status is now he's not roster or waiver exempt, sorry. And so, now they have to actually make a decision. He just gets in because of that. Like, I don't like the idea that the only reason that he's not on the roster is because of a contract issue. And I get that the Jets have created this logjam and they failed to alleviate the logjam. But so when they have a guy, and it shouldn't be a surprise to the Jets that their first rounder is starting to turn into a pretty good defenseman that can play in the AHL. I mean, this has to be something that you would have, expected at some point, right? And so if he's not going to get onto the team because he's waiver exempt, and that's the way, and it makes you so you don't lose maybe a Stanley or Chisholm or whatever. I don't know. I don't know what to do. I think at that point, if you're Ville, you just kind of throw up your hands, just like, send me somewhere else, and think, and that trickles down, because if you're another defenseman on this team that still has this logjam, what are you expecting? Like, what does Declan Chisholm think then too? He's had a pretty good camp too. He's just had, just hasn't been able to play as much. I don't know. I think it creates more problems than not. And plus, I mean, I think that the be-all, end-all, as Rick Bowness has said many times, it's about winning hockey games, winning the Stanley Cup, all that sort of thing. How do you not play the guy that has shown in preseason? And that's what a lot of these decisions are based upon often, and how they've played. How do you not put this guy into the lineup in game one if he's earned that opportunity and earned a run of games? And I think it's beyond that now. I think Ville Heinola has earned a lot of games and a lot of chance to actually get comfortable in an NHL jersey in an NHL. And we could talk about, he had some times last year, but he's getting called up to come in and play into Buffalo, and you don't know if he's even going to play that day. And there was a lot of things last year, and sure, he had his chances, but I think, again, he hasn't been discouraged. I mean, I know there's been times where he might have asked for a trade, or he's shown his disgruntledness or whatever. But every summer he comes back and he's added something to himself, whether it's muscle mass or just a better defensive player, both. And so I struggle with the idea that if the Jets are all in on winning and they're not going to play one of their best defensemen, well, that's their goal. I just don't know what that says. I don't know what it says to the fans. I don't know what it says to their defensemen in the system.
What it says to the rest of the room. What it says to the rest of the room, too. And listen, there's always going to be loyalty to guys that have been around, guys that are veteran players, guys that are very well-liked teammates. But I'm with you as well. I mean, there is a messaging that, I say this a lot. I mean, the NHL is the best league in the world. I mean, you have to earn your way there. You have to prove that you belong. Sure. But when you do, I mean, it is incumbent. It's the coach's job. Paul Maurice always used to say, they do the team, the lineup card is mine. And for Rick Bowness, it's not about developing players or seeing young guys. It's about putting your best team on the ice. And there certainly is a case. I think Heinola has made the case that he is absolutely one of the top 6 defensemen for the Winnipeg Jets. And this game on Thursday, and again, we'll see who's sick, who's able to play. Mm-hmm. Not an ideal situation, but I would imagine Billy will certainly be in the lineup. Yep. I'm interested as to who he plays with. Because in a lot of ways, I think this game was going to set the tone and basically be almost a mirror image of what we'll see on next Wednesday in Calgary. But it's not easy. You're right. We've been talking about this logjam on the blue line for the better part of 18 months here, Scott. And now it really does seem like the time. And I mean, there is, if they take sort of that easy way out, let them go with the Moose, even if they say, hey, this is just temporary, we're going to work things out. I mean, I do wonder, what that does to the player, what it does to the relationship with the team. And I also think that I'm not sure that they're a better team on the ice with him out there. Let me ask you this. Let's say that Rick Bowness comes to the same conclusion that a lot of people have had, that this guy needs to play. Who's out? Who are the where does he fit? Question. Who is he playing with, and who's the odd man out?
Well, I think right now the easy answer is Nate Schmidt, and I think it's just because he's been injured, so he's a little bit behind the 8 ball, right? I mean, it's you're hoping that he's got some sort of lower body injury, but one thing with Rick Bowness, we hope we have him the next day, and then you hope we have him the next day after that, and it just turns into weeks sometimes, right? Let's look back to Nikolai Ehlers last
year.
Like
Janarian Grant.
Right, yeah, it is, right? So, I mean, we don't know the full extent of Nate Schmidt's injury, but we do know that he's been skating. So you have a lower body injury and you've been skating, well, it's a good sign, right? But, if Nate Schmidt doesn't play on Thursday in the last preseason game, and this is no discredit to Nate Schmidt, he's a good hockey player, but, for a guy who's getting up there in age, you wonder, what kind of, just how much behind he might be, right? And instead, you're going to have a guy like Billy, perhaps, who's been in the fight all training camp, and so he's ready. Like he is in as good a form as you can be. So to me, it's got to be Nate Schmidt, right? I mean, that's where it is, and I think that's probably the only place. I don't think they're taking Neil Pionk out of the lineup, right? I think. Pionk had a pretty tough year last year. He was injured for a lot of it. He won't talk about his injury. He doesn't want to make it as an excuse. That's fine. But I think this team is looking for Pionk to bounce back this year. And that it's not going to be Brendan Dillon because he offers the size that they want. And of course, it's not going to be Dylan DeMello or Josh Morrissey because they're the top pairing on this team. I think it's Nate Schmidt. I mean, and the problem that you're going to have here is that you have a guy that's making close to $6 million a year, just under. As your 7th defenseman to start the year. And who knows? I mean, if Billy keeps playing well, let's say he actually gets that chance to be on October 11th, playing beside, I don't know, maybe it might even be Brendan Dillon because he's played pretty well with Dillon and arguably, man, it might not even be arguable anymore that Billy's actually made Brendan Dillon a better player. While he's playing with them. So, to me, it's got to be Nate Schmidt. And, I just don't know. The problem is if Nate Schmidt's healthy, I'm not entirely sure that that's what the Jets are going to do, right? Because that's not really their kind of MO. And this goes back to the decision of loyalty and all that type of thing, right? I mean, you had Nate Schmidt waive his no trade to come here, and but at the end of the day, I mean, the Jets have to stop kind of juggling all these balls in the air when it comes to these tips play, and just put the best team on the ice, and that's what fans want to see. Like, I think, I haven't been paying attention too much to the chat because I'm trying to look into the camera here, but I imagine there's a lot of fans in this chat and just fans in general that just want to see the best team. And if you've earned the right to play on this team, and some of these young prospects that get spoken of so highly by this team, by this organization from the time they're drafted, and over the years. I mean, we've been talking about Ville Heinola since 2019. We've been through a global pandemic. We've been through all sorts of crap, since then. And we're still talking about Ville, and he still hasn't got a shot yet, really, truly. To take a spot on this defense and kind of run with it and make it his own. So I think it's got to be Nate Schmidt if it is, and I think there's just a road. I think there's a path to that. I think as much as Nate Schmidt might not want to admit it, I mean, I think there's a chance here that Ville just has overtaken him, and the Jets have a problem that they have a guy. But for now, I think you just have to try it. You just have to try it. Let the guy who actually earned the spot, and it's no fault of Nate Schmidt's. He just was injured, but that's the way it happens. You can't make the club from the tub, right? I mean, that's the old saying that they have, and I think
that's a football saying. They don't have guaranteed contracts in football.
That's fair enough, but I just think that you just run the risk too much, and this goes back to my earlier point: is you just run the risk of pissing off the player and almost. Just maybe even the team too, right? Like, you got to wonder what these other guys in the dressing room are like, and I don't think, don't get me wrong, I don't think they're saying, well, we don't want Nate Schmidt or whatever. But I think everybody in that dressing room, what does this also say to guys like Connor Hellebuck and Mark Scheifele, who they're trying to re-sign? If you're just not willing to put your best defenseman on,
here's the question though. Do you think those guys all see it this way? Like, it's easy to read Twitter and see the loudest 10 people in Jets Twitter saying, "This is ridiculous. This guy needs to be playing." And again, I'm someone that would like to see that case.
Yeah,
but I just mean that, like, listen, everyone that you hear, those narratives are all done by people that have they're all coming. They're all coming from one series side. Guys that have been talking about Heinola for 2 years, of course they're saying the same thing. I mean, in some ways, there's an element of proving yourself. I was right. And I mean, and again, other times, it's hard to admit that you were wrong. So I mean, like, it's hard to take too much from narratives of people on Twitter. I'm not disagreeing that that's possible though, as well. I mean, they think, wow, this guy does bring something, and more than anything, and I'm not even sure that this is about, what Ville brings, because I mean, hey, listen, he's made mistakes in the past. He's been victimized at times, but so have a lot of the other guys on that blue line. I mean, I think that's what it comes down to, and. But I am with you. All those questions, we'll never know, like, what's inside of Mark Scheifele's head or Hellebuck's head or whatever about those sort of moves. Wonder
if you're not willing, and you got to think that, if somebody's playing better defense in front of Connor Hellebuck, I bet you Connor Hellebuck knows damn well who's playing better defense in front of him, right? Just as much as if you're a forward on this team, and you know pretty well that you can depend upon one of your defensemen moving up the ice and being able to actually get a zone exit, you're pretty happy if you're a forward on this team. So I don't think this is about, at this point, I'm not even sure it's about biases or anything like that. Ville has shown the way during this training camp that he deserves a spot. And it's not just fans saying it. It's not just his best, his biggest, his biggest fans saying it. Even his detractors are probably saying it right now, and they just don't want to admit it. And so, yeah, I mean, to me, it's, at some point, something has to give on this team, Huss, and you have to play the players that actually deserve the bloody spot to do it.
The funniest thing about that is that I'm sitting here talking about some people that have been saying the same thing for the last year and a half or 2 years. We all have, because the situation hasn't changed a damn thing, and we're still sitting here. Right? And now Declan Chisholm has entered the chat, and he is not waivers exempt, and he could go the way of Jansen Harkins. And to me, I mean, listen, we don't need to get into the Kovacevic situation of last year, but
Scored a goal last night.
I saw that. You have a young player that has excelled at the American Hockey League level, has barged into the conversation that, could be a great NHL defenseman. I mean, you don't want to lose that guy without ever seeing it. But I mean, to me, if anyone thought that Declan Chisholm had the leg up because of the contract thing, I think the play of Ville Heinola has put him back into that spot right now. And it really is going to be a fascinating. Listen, we've just got a couple minutes left because we're going to head to the Twin Cities with Jessi in just a couple minutes. But quickly, what is the end game for Logan Stanley in the next week? I mean, is he potentially just hitting the waiver wire like a lot of former first rounders have been over the last little bit?
Yeah, I mean, this is another interesting thing, right? I mean, is this Jets team willing to kind of suck it up and realize that maybe it's just they don't have a choice, right? I mean, would you rather lose? I mean, honestly, to me, it's Stanley right now. It's Stanley and Kyle Capobianco who go on waivers. They might not have to make that decision if Capobianco is still injured, right? But to me, how do you want to? I don't think you want. You've already lost Kovacevic and Jansen Harkins now. Now Jansen Harkins was completely out of favor with this team. We knew that. We could see it. We saw it. Halfway through camp, right? He scores 2 goals. And he still can't get into the NHL group. We knew it was that was just the way it was. But I don't think that Chisholm or Heinola are falling out of favor at all. I think Logan Stanley just hasn't shown what he needs to show. I mean, there's always things. You saw the shot last night from the point, but whatever. I mean, he still doesn't show the physicality that he should for being a 6'7" defenseman, right? And his defense just wasn't there last night. And so I think at some point you just be like, well, time to give this guy a different chance somewhere else. And yeah, I mean, first rounder or not first rounder, I mean, what are you going to do? I mean, it is what it is. He hasn't panned out. He's 25 years old. He was drafted in 2016, and it hasn't panned out for him yet. So
and there's other guys.
How long are they going to wait? And exactly, right? There's other guys that deserve shots. And at some point you have to, again, if you're trying to win, you have to stop trying to play the players that aren't really helping you win.
Yeah, well,
I don't know what else to say, like
Thursday night, Ottawa. First of all, we'll see who's well enough to actually play in the game, and then get ready for that tilt next week. Have a great one, Scotty. Always a pleasure having you on the program. Yeah. Thanks for doing this, dude.
Yeah, appreciate it, man. Have a good
right on. Good Jets talk with Billeck. Hey, folks, don't forget, if you haven't already, if you've been thinking about it, you still got some time to join the WST crew for our Winnipeg Jets, Winnipeg Sports Talk ticket pack. 4 amazing games, starting with the return of Pierre-Luc Dubois on the 17th of October, McDavid and the Oilers in November, Saturday night against the Maple Leafs in January, and then the Calgary Flames in April. $375 all in. Section 3, I think 316 is sold out now. So we've got seats across the aisle in 317. Remo and I will be hosting. We'll have a little get-together before the games in the bar outside there. You'll get a free beer, drink, pop, or water at every game as well. And we'll have some cool giveaways. So hit the description in the links in the description of the YouTube channel. And if you are listening on the podcast, go to winnipegsportstalk.com, get on it, and join the crew. We've had a great response on this. We basically sold out the first section, and now we're into section 317. So looking forward to seeing you guys for that at our Jets 4-game pack. And don't forget, the home opener is a week Saturday, 3 p.m. game, big party in the plaza, free to all ages beforehand from noon until 2:30. Tons of entertainment, food and beverages from the Hargreaves Street Market vendors. Great way to kick off the season with the Winnipeg Jets. And hey, just before we bring in Jessi, I know Weber, Mike, and a lot of Manitobans heading down to the Twin Cities for this baseball game this afternoon and tomorrow. Many of them probably popped into Royal Sports to grab some Blue Jays gear on the way. If you want to get ready for the Bomber playoff run, the Jets season, Blue Jays playoffs, and more, you know that Royal Sports is the #1 sports superstore in town. And of course, with hockey here, they've been the experts in all things hockey for over 40 years. Pop by and see them. Royal Sports, 750 Pembina Highway. And give them a follow on Insta at Royal Sports Pembina for the latest merchandise drops and sale information. And speaking of that baseball game, when we're done here, might want to slide into your local Boston Pizza Lounge to watch the Blue Jays on the big screen with the big sound, maybe get into a little happy hour. Of course, ice cold schooners, world famous BP wings, gourmet pizzas, and more. If you are staying at home, you can always get the great taste of BP by ordering online at bostonpizza.com. All right, very fortuitous timing to have one of our faves, Jessi Pierce, back on the program, because we're kind of over the next week going through the Central Division, checking in on the Jets' rivals. But of course, we've also got a pretty big ball game that I know she's going to be paying attention to this afternoon. Jessi, what's going on? Great to have you back on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. And I'm sorry, I'm just going to say it. Go Twins. There we go.
A lot of Jays. What's the vibe around the Twins going into the playoffs? I mean, this is a team that has literally had no success for a long time. They've had a great season. They won the division. AL Central pretty weak. But they go in as a slight favorite in this game tonight against the Jays. But I'm really interested. I mean, we all know, there's so many people from around here that are Minnesota fans in things that we're not competing in, like the NHL. The scar tissue, shall we say, that that Minnesota fans have. I mean, what's the vibe around this team and the fan base going into this afternoon's first pitch?
There's excitement, but that's us Minnesota fans in general, right? We get excited about every playoff contention, knowing what the outcome has been, knowing what the outcome is likely to be. That's across the sports boards, you guys. It's tough, but it's a beautiful day. What a day for a ball game. 85 here, almost a smidge warm for October 3rd, if you ask me. But people are excited. They got their Homer rally towels running around, swirling. And home field advantage, I think, will really help. I like this matchup against the Blue Jays. I really, really do. I think they're very even. Both are very deep in pitching, which is not something I can often say about the Minnesota Twins. But it's going to come down to offense and who's swinging the better bat. And hopefully that's Minnesota. Hopefully we can take some sort of curse off of ourselves just once. But, we'll have to see.
Well, the funny thing is, in recent years, both of these teams have been so disappointing in the playoffs that one of these fan bases is going to be happy in a few days. Like, someone has to win this. So we'll get it on. Anyways, 3:30 p.m. first pitch coming up from Target Field. Meanwhile, you, of course, with your gig at NHL.com and the Bar Down Beauties, have been all over Minnesota Wild training camp. What's the vibe around the Wild as they finish up the preseason and get ready for next week's opening puck drop?
There's some optimism there. It's hard to say because I'm not sure if you guys have heard. I'm just kidding. I know everybody in the hockey world has heard. The Minnesota Wild are broke. They are very cap restrained. It handcuffed Bill Guerin for so much this offseason. He really couldn't do a heck of a whole lot. So Minnesota, for better or for worse, is returning the same team that they had last year. They weren't able to hang on to many of their free agents that they had signed later on, losing Gustav Nyquist, Ryan Reeves. They were able to hang on to Marcus Johansson, who found fantastic chemistry alongside Matt Boldy last year. So that's going to be very, very exciting. But in general, Minnesota is coming in, again, about middle of the road, especially when you look at the Central and you look at what some of the other teams have done, Winnipeg included. Minnesota, there's excitement as always. We are the state of hockey. We're excited to get back on the ice. There's still Kirill Kaprizov. There's Marc-Andre Fleury. There's Matt Boldy again, as I'd mentioned. So you have some of those names that get a lot of excitement going, but it's going to be an interesting season. Again, just knowing that there's been no money for Bill Guerin to play with. There's not a whole lot. The toughest 2 years of those buyouts of Zach Parise and Ryan Suter are amongst the Wild fans. So it'll be interesting to see how they can do with what they're able to afford.
Yeah, when you look at you pull up Cap Friendly and you see where the Wild are at. They're basically right at the cap. And then you look at the dead cap money, $14.7 million this year, $14.7 million next year. And then it gets a much more manageable 1.66 for the next few years. Say that money was just there for them. Where would be the focus of Bill Guerin? Like, if there's a piece that the Minnesota Wild are lacking in when you look at this roster right now, because they were a solid team last year. Where would they like to improve? And maybe they can do that internally at a much lower cost.
Give me a number one center. I beg of you. I absolutely beg of you. Again, for years, Minnesota has never really had that depth up the middle. Joel Eriksson is, quote unquote, the number one center, despite him maybe not playing on that top line alongside Kirill Kaprizov and Matt Zuccarello. That spot belongs to Ryan Hartman as of right now. But Joel Eriksson is the best that they have. He, you saw the impact that he made by being absent last year for the Minnesota Wild in the first round against Dallas with that broken leg. Just not having his grittiness, his net front presence, his face-offs. He is a Mr. Everything, as Dean Evson calls him, because he plays in all situations on the ice too. So I need more of that. It's funny. I love Joel Eriksson. He's good for Minnesota. That doesn't necessarily mean he's good across the league either. I need a good number one center. Now, you'd mentioned on the cheap, Marco Rossi, a former first-round pick for Minnesota, 9th overall back in the day. He is expected to make the roster out of the gates, out of training camp. And there's a lot of expectations on him to do really well. He stayed in Minnesota over the summer to train and get ready. He put on an additional 10 to 15 pounds to get stronger. In the past 2 seasons for Marco, it just hasn't worked. He's done well in the American Hockey League, and it hasn't quite translated into the NHL. So I'm curious to see if he's ready to be strong up the middle and be a true number one center for Minnesota, because certainly all eyes are on him, and it's kind of a make or break season for Marco Rossi.
You mentioned Fleury. It was Gus that was, we have our own Gus bus here in David Gustafson, but Philip Gustafson, in a lot of ways, was sort of the story of last year when you talk about the prevention of goals for the Minnesota Wild. How do things stand heading in? One guy gets hot, obviously he'll get some more starts, but do they have a plan of how they're going to manage both Fleury and Gustafson throughout the year?
You always have to, right? Especially with Marc-Andre Fleury. I hate to say he's old because he's not much older than me, but he's on the aging out spectrum, especially for hockey goaltenders. But no, Minnesota's put themselves in a really good position as far as goaltending tandem. Marc-Andre Fleury enters the final year of his contract. He had mentioned he will mull retirement decisions over throughout the course of the year, so it'll be interesting to see what his career path looks like following this year. But Minnesota has Philip Gustafson now, who signed a 3-year extension before he went to arbitration under restricted free agency, So that's huge. And then they have Jesper Wallstedt, a first rounder, everything that can be in the waiting in the wings. So it's a good situation. As far as for this year, I think you see Gustafson take the lion's share. I know for the past 2 seasons, Minnesota's gone very 50-50, and that goes back to when it was Marc-Andre Fleury and Cam Talbot. Last year it was 50-50 because Philip Gustafson admittedly came into camp a little out of shape, and nobody really knew what to expect of him. I think it took us all by surprise to see his name amongst the top in the league, especially toward that second half of the season. So you're hoping it's not a flash in the pan. I don't think it is, because his demeanor has just always remained so calm, so steadfast, so straightforward, that I think that shows you he is ready to replicate what was proven last year. So will he get more starts? I think absolutely. I think if you were to call it, and Dean Evson always hates to call it, but I think Philip Gustafson is your number one goalie and Marc-Andre Fleury is your backup for all intents and purposes. But either way, a solid tandem moving forward for Minnesota this season and in the future.
You mentioned the lacking depth at center. Not the case on the wing. You got Kaprizov on the top line, Matt Boldy behind him, and listen, I think everyone knows that Kaprizov is a legit superstar in this league. But Boldy, coming off a 30-goal season last year and just over 60 points, didn't have a great playoff. But, is there more to get from Matt Boldy? And how much pressure is on him because of the lack of centers for a guy like that to be really an offensive catalyst playing outside of the top line?
He likes to call it expectation, because I think we always ask Matt Boldy that, like, is there pressure now? You signed a 7-year, $49 million contract last year as just a kid out of the gate, the pressure that's there. And he says, no, it's an expectation I hold for myself. I want to live up to that. And you had mentioned he had the drought in the playoffs. This is following a hot streak he had, which also followed another goal drought. So he's kind of up and down. But again, he's so young and continues to develop at such a fantastic pace. I think there is high expectation. I think he can continue to do what we saw last year. The big question last year was, is there going to be that sophomore slump? You saw him kind of come in after injury his rookie year and do some big things, but he even improved on that last year. And I think moving forward, that's just going to be his mentality. He knows that he has to be that second in command behind Kirill as far as scoring and point production goes. And I think he's ready. And I had mentioned Marcus Johansson. I think those two found a really good chemistry with Joel Eriksson in the middle and those two on the wing. And I think that's huge. That's everything. When you have a line mate that you've played with, they didn't get to play, obviously an entire season together, but when Johansson came in, they really found something special. So I'm excited to watch Matt Boldy continue to ascend upward.
Calen Addison finally got a deal. And again, that probably wasn't a fun situation to be in, negotiating without much without many other opportunities against a team that has no money. That being said, he's signed. He's going to be in the lineup. But when you look at this blue line core, who are going to be the horses that Dean Evison rides the most right now? The big minute munchers on the blue line for Minnesota projected to be.
I think Jonas Brodin and Brock Faber. Brock Faber we saw come in out of the University of Minnesota last year, a good old Minnesota boy, which we love that storyline here, obviously. No, but he is going to have a tremendous and long NHL career. He's just got this confidence and this poise. And again, he has that long stick, that mobility back there. And he's learning. And I think pairing him with Jonas Brodin, a player who's so consistent and a guy that can really cover up any of those mistakes. I mean, God bless Matt Dumba. He did it for Matt Dumba for many, many years. And now he'll be doing that with a younger player like Brock Faber. I think that's going to be my favorite defensive pairing. They will probably be second behind Jacob Middleton and Jared Spurgeon, a pairing that really showed what they could do. Obviously, Spurgeon, another very consistent player, captain of this team, moves incredibly well, plays in all situations as well. And then Jake Middleton, this big husking guy that can there make up the size that Spurgeon lacks. So those are going to be your top 4 pairs for sure. Unfortunate for Kalen Addison, it'll probably be another season spent mostly in the press box, but I can see a rotation too, because there are some other defensemen in there that are kind of, wavering as well. You've got Alex Goligoski, another player kind of on the older side of things, and John Merrill as well. So it'll be interesting, but I think those 4 players in Brodin, Faber, Spurgeon, and Middleton will kind of be the go-tos and the shutdown pairs.
Jessi Pierce, NHL.com, down in the Twin Cities, getting us ready for a puck drop, looking around the Central Division. The rivalry between the Jets and the Wild got pretty spicy at the end of last season. Of course, Ryan Reeves was always front and center of it. He's gone now. Who's going to be the guy standing up for, Hartman-esque cheap shots on Nikolai Ehlers when things get going, Jessi? We're still sour
You're
about
not
that.
Possibly referring to the Logan Stanley on Kirill Kaprizov, which injured Kaprizov.
That was just an accident. I mean, that was just an awkward play. I mean...
Credit to Logan Stanley. Kirill Kaprizov also said that. He said, it's a hockey play. It is what it is. And, he's fine. He's all good. But it's funny you mentioned that, because in Minnesota, I think a lot of people were wondering who is standing up for Kirill, because you didn't really have Ryan Reeves do a heck of a whole lot, Marcus Foligno either. But Foligno's back, and then they signed Pat Maroon. Pat Maroon, as we all know, the championship pedigree, but a big dude that is going to be out there kind of patrolling as best he can as well. So I think you've got Foligno, who can throw a Superman punch a time or two as well, which was still one of my favorite memories to see to date.
Absurd.
It's so absurd, but so wonderful. And again, with that rivalry, just feeding the fuel there, right? And then I think Brandon Duhaime will get in there and mix it up a little bit, some of those 4th line guys. But Maroon and Foligno are going to be the big bruisers for Minnesota should they need it.
Well, those will be some interesting games especially the first matchup between these clubs, considering what happened at the end of last year. Hey, listen, while I got you, what a huge sports week it is in the Twin Cities. I'm actually heading down. A ton of people are heading down on the weekend to see the Chiefs-Vikings game, and now Minnesota's playing Michigan in prime time the night before. But I have to ask you about the Vikings. I mean, they had that 0-3 start. They got the win last week. They got the Super Bowl champs coming in, and apparently the demand for tickets, I mean, they haven't seen anything like this. Even before Kelsey and Taylor Swift got together.
It's the Taylor Swift effect, though, right? Like, it's got to be a little bit.
Well, I can tell you, before this all happened, I was speaking to someone in the Vikes ticket office that said this regular season game was the most demanded game since they had been with the organization. And then all of this happened lately. It is going to be a scene. It'll be a nationally televised game at 3:25. But is there a little more hope in Viking Nation after the win last week? Or is it sort of assumed that, after that start, this is probably going to be a real uphill battle in a division that's wide open? Oh, credit to Detroit. They look quite good.
I was going to say that's the one shining hope, is that Minnesota has a pretty soft division for the most part. They've got a tough go against Kansas City. They've got the 49ers on the docket, but then it gets a little bit easier. You've got Green Bay, you've got Chicago to go through. Games that are winnable. Are the fans back on the bandwagon? Not quite yet, because you should be Carolina. They are terrible. They are clearly kind of giving up. I mean, it was great to see the defense take opportunity finally against a very weak offense and a very young quarterback. But it's tough. Again, as Minnesota fans, we hate to be down on our team, especially the boys in purple. it's just going to be a tough year. That offensive line is painful to watch. It is so incredibly painful, mixed in with the defense that can't quite figure it out, a lack of a run game. Luckily, there's Justin Jefferson, and Kirk Cousins, a very polarizing quarterback, has his moments as well. So it is, I mean, people will always be doing their skull chants up here. We know it. We love it, no matter the outcome. But I think it's not going to be quite the magical season Minnesotans had last year.
Reg Dunlot in chat. Come on, Huss. You know you want to talk about Taylor Swift. We've spent a lot of time talking about it. There's no doubt about it. It has been. I mean, the crazy thing is, like, when you mentioned the Taylor Swift effect, it is absolutely real.
Yes.
I mean, we had a big conversation last week knowing that she was going to be at the game in New York on Sunday night as to what that was going to do to the viewership of Sunday Night Football. And I mean, already one of the most popular shows on television, $20 million average, ended up hitting $27 million, and the most watched program since the Super Bowl right now. So I'm not sure. I don't expect her. You haven't heard any news. She's probably not going to be there in the Twin Cities on Sunday, right?
Don't tell Minnesotans that. They'll take it personal. We like to take things personal here. Why doesn't she like us? What the heck? I thought she loved US Bank Stadium.
Take it as a compliment. It's one thing to go see the Bears and the Jets knowing that the outcome is almost a foregone conclusion.
Yeah.
If she comes here, they almost expect the Chiefs to win, but it should be a lot of fun. I cannot wait to get down there for Canadian Thanksgiving weekend south of the border for a couple really fun games. Jessi, always love having you on the show. Thank you very much for doing this, and I look forward to catching up throughout the season with you as the Jets and Wild get at it.
Sounds good, Huss. We'll talk to you later.
Take it easy. There's Jessi Pierce, NHL.com, and the Bar Down Beauties podcast. All right, some great stuff earlier with Ted on the Bombers. Of course, one more home game for the Bombers. That is coming up on the 21st of October against the Edmonton Elks. And the Princess Auto tailgate party will be going for that one. I remember what they did late in the year last year with the fire pits and whatnot, hot chocolate there. Hopefully it won't be that cold on the 21st of October. But then we've got playoff football coming as well. And, of course, the Princess Auto, proud sponsors of the Bombers and WST and the Princess Auto tailgate zone before all Winnipeg Blue Bomber football. And, of course, Princess Auto is where you'll find the best deals on the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around. Everything you need to complete the projects on your list or start something new is at Princess Auto. Pop by and see them, Panet Road, Portage Avenue West locations, or shop online 24/7, 365 at princessauto.com. And a big thanks to Spicy and Joe and our pals down at Consolidated Supply. What a summer it's been for them. Of course, they are the leaders in irrigation systems for your property, working with golf courses throughout the year here in Manitoba. Artificial turf, both indoor and outdoor. And golf carts is the exclusive club car dealer in Manitoba. More than just for the golf course, though. Got some incredible vehicles with some real industrial usage. So check them out if you're interested in that for your operation. And hey, other great options for your property, including hot tubs and amazing outdoor kitchens, as well as small engine parts and repair. They are the experts. Consolidated Supply have so much waiting for you. Pop down and see them at the showroom, open to the public, 1395 Nyako Road East, or you can find out more online at cte.ca. And hey, back at it Thursday night at Canada Life Centre. Final preseason game. We'll get a little more clarity as to who's going to be playing over the next couple days. One thing you can take to the bank is that you can now enjoy the great taste of our favorite local beer, Little Brown Jug, as they are now an official partner of the Winnipeg Jets and available at Canada Life Centre. If you're in the lower bowl, they've got the north end spot in and around where the old Moxies was. They've also got it at the south end. And if you're with us upstairs in the 300s, the new craft beer corner is in the bar at section 310. So make sure to check that out and enjoy some Little Brown Jug the next time you're taking in Winnipeg Jets hockey. All right, let's get to Michael Remis here. And I know you've got the poll up right now. I do want to ask, and I believe the poll question is, who are you cheering for? I'd like to know, who do you think is going to win this series? That's the why not question of the day for Not Autocorp over at Waverly and McGillivray. Confidence level that the Blue Jays can get this done, starting with the win tonight. I'll be honest, I'm feeling pretty giddy about the Jays' chances, Remo. And it starts with the pitching. I can't wait to see what Gausman has in store for the Twins tonight. It was so big for Texas to beat Seattle on Saturday and allow them to have Gausman go for game number 1. But I know you were paying attention to this race throughout all the way down to game 162. Where are you at before we talk about what the lines are for this series?
Yeah, I had to make the poll. Shout out to, I think it was Rob MC in chat, who didn't believe that, Winnipeggers or Canadians cheered for the Blue Jays and thought everyone from Winnipeg likes the Twins. 84% say they're cheering for the Blue Jays as opposed to Twins. So there are Twins fans here, and maybe even fans of both. They play in different divisions. But I think Jays majority. I mean, they're on TV. Grew up with the Jays. They're the only Canadian team, so I think I'm not surprised there. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be up to the Jays lineup, hitting with runners in scoring position, something they've struggled to do. The pitching, not worried about that. You'd like to see Gausman do what he did all season, Cy Young candidate, and Chris Bassett tomorrow. You're going to get at least 6 innings.
Bassett led the AL in wins.
Yeah, that's a surprise.
Guys. And I mean, Barrios going up against his old team. I mean, there's a lot of juicy storylines to this. But as T. Will said, to answer my question as to how you feel they're going to do, it depends. Are the Jays going to remember to bring the bats? I've got a lot of confidence in the pitching staff, certainly in the guys that they've got, they're rolling out. Kikuchi available to go in relief or long relief at times as well. But to me, it's exactly what T. Will just said. Are they going to be able to hit? Reem, I was talking about this with Dusty today on the Lock Shop. Matt Chapman has had such an underwhelming year at the plate. He's going into free agency right now. Everyone thought that he was going to be a $25 million a year player. I'm not sure that that's still on the table for him anywhere. But I'll tell you what, you can erase a lot of the narrative from the regular season if you go out and have a monster postseason. And there's a big opportunity for a number of guys that had underwhelming years at the plate to put themselves in a position to put that behind them now that we're playing for real.
Yeah, I mean, you can make a lot of money in the playoffs, Huss, where everyone's watching. You get called things like clutch. So, sure, if he has a big postseason, that's the last thing that you remember, and people would be interested. So we'll have to see what happens there. I mean, the Jays got a great lineup: Springer, Guerrero, Bichette, but hitting with runners in scoring position has been a challenge for them, and it's going to be plenty of opportunity to fix that here in the playoffs against Minnesota.
Yeah, Doug Phil, Jays didn't acquire Chapman for his bat, though. We knew what we were getting. Yeah. But, I mean, it's still been way below the usual standard. I mean, was we expecting him to hit 310? No. But, and not only, I mean, listen, we can talk about numbers, and the numbers from over the entire 162. But, I mean, the biggest reason why the Blue Jays were in this situation coming down the stretch, and you nailed it, I mean, their inability to hit with runners on base and in scoring position and the amount of double plays they hit into. So, listen, it's going to start with the pitching, but got to get a few bats. Looking forward to this game tonight. It is Gausman on the mound, and let's get over to the Coolbet lines while we're talking about all of this. For today's game, the Jays now a plus 108 favorite. I guess if you weighted it out, you were getting a much better number. Blue Jays plus 108, Twins a home favorite at minus 122. What's interesting though is that while the Twins are favored for tonight's game, the Jays are actually favored in the series. No, they opened up at even money. Obviously, a lot of people came in and hammered the Jays, but Toronto minus 120 for the series, and the Twins are even money, despite being at home for the first two games and a home favorite tonight. The Texas Rangers and the Rays are at it right now in the third inning. So that one's off the board. But a little later on, Milwaukee minus 172. And the Arizona Diamondbacks plus 152. Phillies and Marlins as well. Phillies minus 149 favorite. The Marlins plus 132. Milwaukee, Tampa, and Philadelphia, all significant series favorites there. Let's get over to the Canadian Football League. And Remo, before you click on that, have you seen the Lion and the Bomber Lions game yet?
Yeah, I stupidly looked. I realized.
Oh, okay, you did.
I realized after. I was like, I shouldn't have looked. Then it'd be more fun to reveal on the show. But
yeah, we did it in the lock shop today. I was thinking that this would be close to a pick'em. Dusty was thinking that, would probably be the home field advantage for BC around 3. And it's opened up as BC 2-point favorites against the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. And the money line, plus 112. I have to think there's going to be some steam coming in from Bomber Nation on the Bombers over the course of the next few days. I wouldn't be surprised if this gets pretty close to a pick'em by the time it goes off on Friday night.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was -1, but yeah, -2 for the Lions. Maybe go with the Bombers there. Interesting to note the over-under, the highest total of the week with 50.5 seems high for CFL. If you remember, Huss, the Bombers hit that total in their last meeting on their own. So 50.5. Yeah,
and the Bombers have had good games, excuse me, in BC over the last few years. I mean, I know it was Drew Brown that started in the last game last year, but even they put up some points. I have no doubt, and it's just like we talked with Ted earlier, I have no doubt that the Bombers offense will put up points. I mean, between Brady Oliveira and the incredible season he's having, back-to-back MOP, Zach Caleros, that receiving core, when healthy, as good as anything I can remember. So they'll get theirs. To me, this is about the Winnipeg Blue Bomber defense, and if they can raise their level of play for a full 60 minutes, I think that the Bombers will have a great, great chance of winning. And, of course, great news today coming out of practice with the return of Janarian Grant.
Yeah, if Janarian Grant's, practicing full uniform day one, you have to think that's a very good sign for him to be in the lineup. So we'll wait and see.
I think they were really extra cautious with him. I think they knew full well that this game was in all likelihood going to mean everything when it comes to the playoff picture in the Canadian Football League. And that is exactly the case. And he's back. So great news for the Blue Bombers when it comes to the health of their number one returner and arguably one of the best in the Canadian Football League. Other games this week, still waiting for the Toronto line. We'll find out what Dinwiddie is going to do with Chad Kelly if he's going to play them now that they're not playing the Bombers. Riders 4.5-point favorites over Hamilton, and the Alouettes, the Thanksgiving Day game, 7-point favorites on Monday against the Ottawa Redblacks. And a quick look at NFL Thursday nighter. Tomorrow night, left hand up for the Commanders, hosting the Chicago Bears, and the Commanders are 6.5-point favorites. They were a very live underdog last week against Philly, in Philly, Reem, and the Bears are, the Bears. So I can't say that I'm too surprised that this number's pushing 7.
Yeah, I was looking at my, I got to do a survivor pick in my pool, and whoever is playing against the Bears seems to be a good pick. I don't know if I can do the Commanders. Justin Fields, is he going to be, what kind of player is he going to be Thursday? Is he going to be the one that we saw on Sunday against the Broncos, or the one that we saw in the first 2 weeks? I mean, this Thursday night game, holy crap, what a crap. Typical Thursday night.
You know what? I like the Commanders. I've always had a soft spot for them. I'm a big Brian Robinson Jr. guy. Scary Terry McLaurin. Sam Howell now there. They got a good defensive line. The fact that we have to watch the Bears is unfortunate. I will definitely agree with you on that. But you know what? We'll have a lot of playoff baseball, probably some game 3s happening that day.
We'll be at the Jets game too.
So bring it on. Yeah, of course. And we're going to be at the Jets game. So you're right. We'll just keep an eye on it for fantasy and gaming purposes. Of course, folks, big shout out to our friends at Coolbet. If you haven't played a Coolbet before, use the promo code WST for a 100% bonus up to $200 on your first deposit. Remo, one thing, we had such a busy show. I did not get to this yesterday, and I did not want to get through today's show without bringing it up because it was one of my favorite things that happened in the weekend. The onside punt.
Yes.
From the Montreal-Ottawa game on the weekend. Did everybody see this?
I'll bring it up.
An absolutely And I have to say, this is a brilliant hack of the CFL rules. I have never seen this done before. But if you missed it, and I'll describe it for folks. So Montreal throws a screen pass out to their receiver on a 2nd and 18. He gets the ball in the flat. The defense is playing way off, knowing that they're needing 18 yards for a first down. He runs up to very close to the line of scrimmage, drops the ball onto his foot and kicks it, if you will, and I'm using quotations, about 2 yards. It rolls across the line, and then he dives on it. And a lot of people are going, well, what the hell just happened? Well, of course, in the Canadian Football League, the punter can recover the football and anyone behind the punter when the ball is kicked. Now, in this case, the running back with the ball was the punter. He just punted it from behind the line of scrimmage for a yard across the line of scrimmage. Of course, there's no yards penalty because he was the punter, and they got it. This was absolutely brilliant, Reem. And I saw someone point out they actually tried this earlier in the year. But what a way to reset the downs when you're in a second and forever situation. I can't give the Montreal coaching staff enough credit for a brilliant way of keeping their offense on the field.
Yeah, I'm surprised we don't see that more, Huss, and that's tough to defend or what? Well, I mean, there's no one around him. They just did a swing pass, and he's there and tries to punt. It's interesting that it resets the downs, and because you think that if you
just
recover
like a punt.
Yeah, but you're not recovering it ahead of the first down line, but that's what the rule is, and good for them for taking advantage. And I like how the CFL has these rules that are different, makes it a different game. So, hey, if it's within the rules, I'm for them. Again, surprised they don't do it more. And you kind of saw, I feel like you're seeing a lot of that more in the NFL, at least this past weekend, where quarterbacks are running up to the line and they, you think they're going to run, but then they throw it. And this isn't quite like that, but hey, there was no one around him and you go for the punt. Sure. I'm here for it. Great play.
One bird. That's called a dribble ball. There was one Andre Proulx called last year. Sask versus Ham late in the first half after a punt. I'll be honest, I had never seen that before, but it made sense quite quickly. Shout out to Marshall Ferguson, who quickly picked up on it, that is going to reset the downs. And anyways, onside punt in the CFL, we had to make sure we hit that on the program, and we just had so much going on. Yeah, Christopher Met had to check out the Instagram post comment section. Doug Flutie was commenting that he's surprised no one has done this more often.
Yes.
So anyways, we'll see whether something like this pops up again in the Canadian Football League very soon. But very, very unique play going down the rule book. And the reaction of some of the Americans was just hilarious. People, defund the league. What's going on here? This is a joke. Hey, man, this is an old league. And it was a perfect, I know Schickster and a few folks were watching that Aussie Rules Grand Final on the weekend down under. Of course, both forms of football, Australian rules and Canadian football, are rooted in rugby. And that was a perfect example of the roots of the Canadian game coming out. Good stuff today, Reem. I guess tomorrow we'll have a little bit more on the latest with the Winnipeg Jets, seeing who's actually going to be back, in the lineup, in practice, getting ready for that final preseason game. And I have a feeling the topics of Ville Heinola, of course, we'll kind of pay attention to what's happening with Elias Salmonson now that he's back with the Manitoba Moose, but staying here. And then, of course, Declan Chisholm's status, Logan Stanley's status. And again, the battle, if you believe it's between Gus and Parker Ford for that final spot, or will the situation, with players being ill and injured mean that both of those guys might be on the opening day roster? Lots to talk about there, and continued preparation for the big one on Friday night with the Bombers and the BC Lions.
Yeah, I'm going to be refreshing the Winnipeg Jets Twitter to see what the groups are and what we can learn from the groups and the line rushes. Who's in Group A, who's in Group B, although I think it's just one. Now they're down to kind of one bigger group. Who's not practicing, who's recovered from the flu. A lot we can take from this. They're supposed to practice 11 a.m. at the Hockey for All Center in preparation for Thursday's home game against Ottawa. So are a lot of storylines leading in? Are we going to see some guys, actually, some of the NHL players in the lineup for a preseason game, or are they still sick? Major questions. And, Bombers practicing as well. Who's coming on tomorrow? Murat's coming on tomorrow. Greg Wyshynski from ESPN. A little around the league talk as we head into the season. So exciting times.
Ramping up for hockey season. And by the way, everyone, for hockey fans, people that like the odds, tomorrow on the Lock Shop, which is at noon over at Edmonton Sports Talk, Dusty and I are going to be kicking out our favorite NHL props for the season. We'll do a number of players, goals, points, assists, those sort of things, as well as some picks in the divisions, cup winners, and all that. So big NHL preview tomorrow in the Lock Shop. Join us at noon before that. Give the boys a sub over on their channel. I know they gave us a nice little bump today. And again, we are now less than 40 subscribers away from 10,000. Our goal was to get there by Wednesday. So if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button. And for all of you loyal WSTers, we thank you for your support. Tell a friend about WST and how they can join us daily at 1 or afterwards, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And of course, the podcast always available wherever you get your favorite podcast. Just search Winnipeg Sports Talk. All right, we got some baseball to watch coming up at the bottom of the hour. Enjoy the Blue Jays game today, everybody. We'll be back tomorrow. We'll talk about the Blue Jays. We'll set up game 2. Greg Wyshynski taking us around the National Hockey League. Murat Atesh on the Jets. And we'll certainly be talking about the Blue Line logjam and how he sees things going forward. Have a great one, everyone. Thanks to the sponsors that make this show happen every day, and all of you for making us a part of your day. Have a good one, everyone. Go Jays.
Oh, my God. Oh! Shut it down. Let's go home.
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.